p.m. Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. Ms. Milton, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mr. Orris,
Here.
Mr. Slocum. I know Mr. Slocum's there, isn't he?
I
Okay,
was muted. I apologize. I am here.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Tim. Mr. Burway,
I am present.
Mr. Jinks,
Here.
Ms. Nichols,
Here.
Ms. Cavano,
Here.
Mr. Talbot,
Here.
Mr. Veliver,
Here.
and Mr. Walsh.
Here.
And we have a quorum present.
Thank you very much, Ms. Milton. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To
of
the flag
the United
United
States of
States of
America
America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is executive session, which we're going to push to after our number 4 item, public communications. So we will move to number 4, public communications, starting with a COVID-19 update from our Chesapeake Health Director, Maura Esposito. Thank you once again, Maura. We know you're working around the clock, but we appreciate you coming to these meetings. We're going to put you on our agenda regularly so that we can get as much updates as we can to our community. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. So I will, it's a 4-pager, so it's a pretty long report. So I'll tell you, we are still, I'll start with contact tracing. As of February 5th, Cheshire had 1,399 positive cases. In December, we had 500 cases. There were 75 of those ages between 0 and 19. Our number 1 age bracket was the 50-year-olds with 84 cases, and the number 2 was the 20-year-olds with 78 cases. Very similar situation in January, where we had 356 cases. We had 59 0 to 19 cases. Our number 1 was again 50-year-olds with 70 cases, and then number 2, our 20-year-olds with 58 cases. As of the 5th, the state case rate was 30.1 per 100,000 population. I'm very happy to see that Cheshire rated 130 out of 169 towns and is on a downslope. So I'm very happy to report that. My towns like to compare themselves to you, and it makes me very proud that I live in this community. So I've been creating graphs and access, providing those to Sean and access on our website, and I believe he shares those. Vaccinations. We have held a total of 10 vaccinations clinics so far. 8 have been for our first dose clinics, and 2 have been our second dose clinics, for a total of 1,808 shots. So I think that is really amazing number. We have planned for tomorrow. We have 2 shifts. We have a 10 to 12 second dose and a 1 to 4 first dose, 100 people each, and those spots are all booked. We have one on Thursday again from 10 to 1, 100 doses, all first dose for 75 and older, and those are completely booked. Our clinics pretty well are booked closed. We are also, the week after, February 18th and 19th, we are holding 2 clinics from 9 to 5, where these are just second dose clinics, and we are going to do 800 75-year-olds. So if anybody wants to join and have some fun, you're more than welcome to come and join us. The biggest problem that we are seeing in the system is that if a person gets their first shot with us, we want them to get their second shot with us. And so you are seeing a lot of people getting canceled out of appointments for a number of reasons. One, not a lot of like not my case, but in the hospitals, people got canceled because they just didn't have enough vaccine. We did have to cancel out some second appointments. People made appointments with us. They didn't have their first with us. And I had to make that spot open for the person who had gotten the first one with us. So we are trying our best, but this is a statewide issue. Um, of the first doses, we did 1,636. 41% of all those were given to Cheshire residents. So I was very happy to see that. The Connecticut vaccine tracker map basically has put Connecticut right now, the 75 and olders, 56.8% have gotten their first dose. I'm very happy to say that Cheshire's right up there. We are at 57.2% of our 75-year-olds have gotten their first vaccination. The overall Connecticut, 9.4% of the general population has gotten vaccinated. Cheshire's is a little higher, 14.1, but I believe that has to do with the fact that we have a lot of medical people that live in our communities. So they received their vaccinations as a, thank you, Sean, as a part of 1A. So our current phase 1A is we're doing 1A and 1B. So 1A is your medical, your long-term care facilities, and your healthcare. Your 1B are your 75-year-old plus older and residents and staff of congregate settings. These are your substance abuses, homes, your shelters, your mental health facilities. Starting on February 11th, the 65 to 74-year-olds can be receive their first vaccination. So I think many of them called our office today trying to find where to get a shot. So I'll go over that at the end. We're hearing that potentially in March, our frontline essential workers. So I'm very hopeful that those will include our teachers, our town work staff. There's a lot more people that want to be put on that list and have been asking for that. We're also looking in March for those with underlying medical conditions with increased risk for severe illness. Now, this is on the state website, but those people with an underlying condition so far, according to the CDC, would be people that have cancer, chronic kidney disease, COPD, Down syndrome, heart condition, immunocompromised, obesity, severe obesity, pregnancy, sickle cell disease, smoking, and type 2 diabetes. But as we have learned with all this phasing, more information will be forthcoming. So what have we been doing right now and where do we see the health department going? We continue to be assisting the schools with their case outbreaks. That hasn't really slowed down. It's just been a kind of slow and steady. We continue to be working with our long-term care facilities, and I'm very happy to report they've all received their second doses. So many of them are, I'm very happy to hear that, to be have that protection. We are going to be transitioning from the pool to senior centers. Looking at the numbers for the last, when they started getting reported, it is very clear that some of my other towns are having a little difficulty. And we are having a lot more difficulty in that older age group that can't do the computers, that don't have a single, they share their emails. It's been a struggle for you. It's been a struggle for me. So I have really gone and really researched, and VAMS is actually changing and making it much easier for us to do what's called a third-party VAMS. And this is when no computers, the people don't have to deal with the computer. They just call up themselves, whoever the number is, and they give their name and their phone number, and you tell them when to show up. So we will be switching that. We met today. I met with the 3 towns discussing the rollout of that program. But again, these clinics are really for those people that need the most help and assistance. So at the end, I'll go over some numbers and somewhere you can get some vaccines. I understand the VAMS system still is very challenging, but there's many more numbers that have opened up. So while Chesapicot Health District is still holding clinics, and many people want to get into our down to the pool to get their appointment. Our appointments are by VAMS only still. And I will tell you, once we get a clinic up there, it takes probably an hour before it's booked. I just can't do it fast enough for people. They really like the convenience of it. But also know that if you want to go into VAMS, you can go on by our website, www.chesapicot.org. There is a link right on the front page that will get you registered into VAMS. Once you're in the VAMS system, you can go anywhere. You can go, if you work in Waterbury and you want to go to St. Mary's and they have a clinic open, please be my guest. It's about getting the vaccine. The Connecticut Vaccine Appointment Assistant Line, 1-877-918-22. Oh, look, Sean's jumping ahead of me. That is a very important number. Now, probably about a month ago, we could all attest that it was all sending you just to one place. But now they've brought on almost 100 more operators. So you're actually getting a person and they're going to be getting you an appointment. They're mostly putting you to what are called max vaccination sites. These are your drive-throughs. These are your pull-up, like Sylvia was talking about, roll down that window. They're going to give you that vaccine and get you moving. So Chesapicot will not be found on that site because that's not the method that we use. But please, for those people that can't deal with the computer, that is your best option. But also note, you can go through Hartford Healthcare, and there is the phone number right there on the screen, 1-860-827-7690. You are also going to be speaking to a person, and they have multiple facilities set up right now that they can get you in, but you can also wait. We're in the works. We're going down there tomorrow. They're going to be taking over Oakdale nearby in Wallingford and going to be doing a mass vaccination clinic there. You also have Yale New Haven Hospital, you have Trinity, you have St. Mary's, you have UConn. I hope everyone can share those numbers, that you actually get to a person and they will help make you an appointment, and many of them will help make you a second appointment. So the big push is that if you're getting your first vaccine, they want you to make your second vaccine appointment right there. And that's what we do at our clinic. And that's it. Wow, that went really fast. Sorry, I thought I had a lot more. See, I'm ready to show you the little thing, but I'm not as swift as Sean is there.
Very informative as always, Maura. Thank you. I'll turn it over to questions or comments from members of the council first. Yes, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Maura. Just a quick question. With February 11th, which is Thursday, I know of at least 2 people who called the VAMS number and are between the ages of 65 and 75 and were able to sign up for the Cheshire Pool
Okay.
vaccine. You won't turn them away if they show up, would you?
No.
Okay,
no.
if they signed up, okay.
We had a glitch. Well, I shouldn't say we. VAMS had a glitch, and they were saying for about the past 2 weeks that all our clinics were full, but there were a few slots open. So we tried to fix it. So that means that if they got in today, they fixed it.
Okay.
No,
And
if
the other
you've got
thing,
an appointment, you're in.
and thank you. And the other question was, there are some leftovers sometimes where people don't show for their appointments, and you have a list. Are you using that for first responders or teachers, or what are you doing with those extras? Because I don't want people to think that you're throwing anything out. I know you have a list, but some people think, oh, they wasted it, but I know you don't. You're not.
No, there is very clear protocol that the Department of Public Health has provided to local health department on what to do with extra. And I will say, we have great nurses who have been getting 11 doses. We are actually using a very fine needle for and getting 12 doses at times. So those are the extra doses. We keep up in the front a list of essential workers. That is what I have stuck with. That is what I got approval from the state to do. These can be essential workers in the town. These could be essential workers in the school. But it could be someone that came up to me and said, hey, my husband is 75. He gets a priority. So, and that's usually a volunteer that's working with us. And we also make sure that we use that list to give vaccines to our volunteers who are assisting us. We've had over 150 volunteers helping. And I want you to know that I could not be doing as well as I am doing without those volunteers. That I have health departments that are amazed at how we are doing it because it's hard to manage. But they are a great group. They're dedicated. They love coming out, and it's saving us tons of money, but they're dedicated to the community. And I can't thank you enough. But to just go back to, yes, we have a wait list. It's already pre-done because there's a lot of factors into the end of the night, and I need to have all those people ready on the spot to give them that shot because these are volunteers and they do have a life and go home. So,
Well, that's great to know because I don't want people. I heard somebody say, "Oh, they're throwing extras away," and I said, "I know they're not, but I think it's good for the public to know what you're doing with anything extra. That you do have a list of people that are coming in, so that's great. And I appreciate all that you're doing and the volunteers. You guys are doing a great job, and I know it's only the beginning.
yeah,
Hopefully, the beginning to the end, but it's going to be a long haul for you guys, and I
yeah.
appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Mr. Jinks?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Maura, I just want to ask, I don't know if I heard you right or not, but did you say you're switching from the pool to the senior center, or are you still going to be at the pool?
We are going to be at the pool until March 11th. And on March 11th is our last second dose clinic. And then we are phasing out because by that time, we believe that Oakdale will be up and operating. When we evaluated who was using, who was getting our first doses, I'm not going to lie, we have a lot of our neighbors coming in and using, and so Hartford Healthcare is going to be opening the Oakdale so that all the neighbors, all the towns can go there, and I can really focus just on Cheshire.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Other questions or comments from members of the council? I don't see any. Maura, thank you so much from all of us. All the work that you and your staff and volunteers are doing. A number of us have come to some of those facilities with the volunteers, and they are working tirelessly. So we all owe them a great gratitude for their service, serving a cause greater than their own, putting themselves at risk. And so we thank them. I also want to thank our staff, Sean Kimball and Arnett Talbot, and all of our town staff. I know they have been working shoulder to shoulder with you and your staff and all of the volunteers to roll out what we can to assist our residents to get the vaccinations. Early on, it was testing, and now we're rolling into the vaccination process. And I know it's been a collaborative effort, and Sean and Arnett and all of your staff are also working around the clock to assist our citizens, and I think they need to know that. So, thank you to everyone who's working so hard. I don't think we can thank you all enough. So obviously the council is supporting all of you in any way we can. It is obviously our top priority to assist and make sure that our residents get what they need relative to the vaccinations and testing, et cetera. So we're going to do our part and continue to do our part like we did with opening the pool for the Tri-Town area and so many other things. So please let us know at the council level if you need something. I know Sean and Arnett certainly will.
Yes, they've been great. And, for instance, we're running low on gloves. I just put out a call, and it's amazing how the towns all come in. It's been a really great collaborative effort through all of this.
Well, out of a very difficult situation, it's heartwarming to see all of this. So there is a silver lining in this pandemic of ours, and I think that's it. Seeing people work together, and it's nice to see. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And you all have a very good night. I'm gonna step away.
I don't blame you. Run, Maura, run. Good night, Maura. Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Okay, we're going to move on to a proclamation for our Scouting Recognition Day. And, you know, I'm saddened because we always have the Scouts come, the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts come to our live meetings, and we're unable to do that. So I'm certainly going to read this proclamation on their behalf. And I know we all thank them for everything they do, particularly what they do in our community with volunteer service and projects that they do that add a lot of value to our community. So Scouting Recognition Day, which is February 8th, 2021. Whereas the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts of America are the world's largest organizations dedicated to helping girls and boys everywhere build character, gain skills for success in the real world, and develop conviction about their own potential and self-worth, which will serve them all of their lives. And whereas Scouting has helped millions of young people to confront difficult situations and make responsible decisions. And whereas Scouting instills civic values and virtue in young people, which are integral with the ideals, morals, and principles which America embodies. And whereas Scouting in Cheshire has contributed to the beautification of our town in the form of numerous projects which enrich the appearance and quality of life in Cheshire. Now, therefore, I, Robert J. Orris Jr., Mayor and Chairman of the Town Council, on behalf of the entire Town Council and all our citizens of Cheshire, by this proclamation, do hereby recognize Monday, February 8th, 2021 as Scouting Day and acknowledge the Scouting organizations and all their young participants and volunteers. Dated Cheshire, Connecticut, this 9th day of February 2021. So thank you to all of our Scouts who do so much with that. We will then move on to public comment. Ms. Talbot, do we have any public comments?
We do not, other than the ones that were distributed.
Okay, yeah, we have some letters, which we'll get to later on in the agenda, which is correspondence to the council, but we'll get to. So with that, I guess we'll go back to executive session. I would like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to include our town manager, assistant town manager, Mr. Jascott, Attorney Smith, and I believe Attorney Smith, you also have another attorney associate who will be entering, correct? Mr.
Yes,
Kimball?
Yes, his name is Joe Shareko.
Okay, so Attorney Shareko will be joining us as well. Thank you for being here. So if I can entertain a motion to include all
moved.
those individuals. Mr. Talbot, thank you.
Second.
Mr. Walsh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We are going to go into executive session. I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the items to discuss litigation and personnel matters.
And for those
So that was what the motion was for. My apologies.
and for those that are on the call now, I'll place you into the waiting room once we
number 5, approval of minutes, the regular meeting of January 12th, 2021, special meetings of January 13th, 14th, 19th, 26th, and February 2nd, 2021. Also with corrections of the January 12th, 2021 meeting, which you have in your package.
Move is amended.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Talbot. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I think Ms. Pavano, any questions or comments on approval of the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move on to number 6, consent calendar. Mr. Bowery?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020921-1.
Thank you, Mr. Bowery. Is there a second? Mr. Veliver? Mr. Bowery, back to you.
Yes, thank you. These are 10 very generous gifts in this tough time of the economy. We're finding our community is being so generous in so many different ways to help out our community and our fellow citizens. And it's just great to be doing this month after month.
Thank you, Mr. Bowery. Any questions or comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to new business. A, call for public hearing for the fiscal year 21-22 general operating budget, water pollution control department fund operating budget, and community pool funding operating budget. Mr. Bowery.
Mr. Chairman, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020921-2. Be it resolved that the town council will hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, either virtually or in council chambers, Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut, to consider the proposed general fund operating budget for fiscal year 2021-2022, the proposed water pollution control department fund operating budget for fiscal year 2021-2022, and the community pool fund operating budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. Be it further resolved that the town manager shall cause a notice of said public hearings to be posted and published according to law.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Bowery.
moved.
Second, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Bowery, back to you, sir.
Yes, this is one of the 2 public hearings. We're mandated to have it around this time, and it gives us a good opportunity to hear what the citizens have to say after the town manager has presented his budget recommendation to us. Keep in mind, generally, the meetings will be Tuesdays and Thursdays for the most part from this week through early April, with a deadline of the end of April for adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Bowery. Any questions or comments on the schedule? Call for the public hearing? No? Okay, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Bowery. We'll move on to 9B, approval of former Castletown property successor lease. Mr. Walsh?
Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 020921-3. Be it resolved that the town council approves the successor lease agreement for January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021 with Alex Arisco for a portion of the former Castletown property for agricultural purposes under the terms as presented and attached, and authorizes the town manager to execute said lease agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
Mr. Jinks, thank you. Back to you, Mr. Walsh.
This is the property on the corner of Marion and Jarvis that the town currently owns. And Mr. Risco has been farming it for several years and paying a lease price for us for it. And, you know, it's money that otherwise we wouldn't have. And you know, he's taking care of that property for us and until we have a need for it in the future. So I think it's a win-win for the town.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And the other thing I would add is that we've been doing this with Mr. Risco for a number of years. He's been a good steward. It's not a lot of money. It's only $2,640 a year, but I think it's appropriate for the use. And we did add language to the contract, which provided with clarity that if we needed access to that property for evaluation purposes, particularly in light of what's going on with SMC, that we would have that. So there was an addition into this contract further illuminate the fact that we may need access at some point in time for geotechnical and other study work. So that's just for everyone's edification. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Okay, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to 9C, approval of multi-year service agreement with ThyssenKrupp Elevator Corporation for maintenance of elevators at the town-owned buildings. Mr. Veliver. You're muted, Mr. Veliver.
Isn't that the greatest clause of 2020 and 2021? Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020921-4. Be it resolved, the town council approves a 2-year successor service agreement with ThyssenKrupp Elevator for maintenance of elevators in town facilities for the term of April 1, 2021 through May 31, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Second, Mr. Talbot. Mr. Veliver, back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. This is just a service agreement with the elevator company to maintain the 5 elevators in town facilities at the library, town hall, fire headquarters, police headquarters, and the senior center. The annual cost is under the bid limit, and this agreement is a successor agreement to the previous arrangement, and the town has been satisfied with the vendor service. So I would recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Questions or comments from members of the council? Seeing none. The question, Mr. Nowotny, you're not getting off that easy. I'm going to at least ask you one question.
glad I can make it.
My apologies. The only question I have is, how often do we price check this with firms that we find appropriate to do this work?
I'm glad you asked, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll give you a quick rundown. We did an RFP for the service that covered calendar year 2016, or most of calendar year 2016. So that's when we got RFPs. At that time, ThyssenKrupp was the low proposer for this service at $8,700 a year. This latest go around with them comes out to $9,300 a year, if my math is correct. So over the last 5 years, it's been about $100 a year increase, which hasn't been too tremendous in that world. But the other large players in that game were significantly, well, one certainly was significantly higher, and the other was higher than ThyssenKrupp at the original RFP. So we do routinely check it, but we've been, as Mr. Veliver said, we've been very satisfied with their service, and we haven't had a lot of failures or need to spend extra money on the elevators for things that are out of the contract.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nowotny. Again, any other questions or comments on this matter? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, George, for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you to you and your staff. I know you've been working hard around the clock, and a lot of snow this month already. And thank you. You guys always do a phenomenal job removing snow in our community. So thank you for that. Please pass that on to your staff.
I will. It's all a credit to them. I thank you. It's been an expensive month, unfortunately, but we've got some great folks that are managing the plowing for us and doing the plowing. So we're fortunate as a town to have those folks, and I'll be sure to pass that on. Thank you.
George, can you just accept the compliment and not give us any bad news?
It's not me. I wish it was all me, but like I said, I work with some fantastic.
You had to drag us right into the budget. Thanks, George.
I'm running for office next, so.
Thank you for coming, George. We're going to move on to quickly moving on to the next item, George. 9D, discussion and possible approval of Public Building Commission request to go to bid for the second phase of the Doolittle Bathroom Capital Project. Mr. Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved, the town council approves resolution 020921-5. Be it resolved, the town council approves the final design and authorizes bidding for the second phase of bathroom upgrades at Doolittle School as part of the district-wide lavatory upgrade project.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Nichols, back to you, Mr. Slocum.
Okay, essentially, this is This project is ready to go to bid. There is the financing, slightly less going into it than thought. And they want our approval, but we also have Steve Durkee here from the PBC if he wants to expound upon it and give us more detail. Unless, Steve, you're here for the other one in particular.
I'm here for the other one, sorry.
Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, I think we've had the opportunity to look at this. We know this is something that should be done. I know in light of potential school modernization and things of that nature, this is something that has to be done despite any of that occurring. That's what we've been told, and so that's what I would go on. So I would recommend its approval.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Any questions or comments? Mr. Jinks?
Yeah, thanks. Can someone kind of explain why it has to be done at this time rather than waiting for kind of SMC to work its way through it? What's the situation? I don't really understand that exactly.
Actually, I can comment on that.
Okay.
You're basically getting some handicap upgrades as well. Basically, the bathrooms are antiquated, and but the work being done is a handicap.
So it's ADA compliant?
Yeah, compliant.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, well, also on the SMC, Doolittle isn't involved in scenario one, phase one at all anyway. So if we wait for the if we wait for the reno to come in, it could be 10 years down the road. And I don't think they want to wait 10 years to do those bathrooms over. So it makes sense to do that now. The next one we might have a question about.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions or comments? And remember, we're going out to bid. We're not authorizing the actual construction of the work at this point. So all valid questions, but just so the public understands, we're authorizing this to go out to bid. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Just give me a second to turn my page. We're going to move on to item 9E, discussion and possible action regarding the Public Building Commission request for direction on the Norton Kitchen Upgrade Capital Project. Mr. Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved, the Town Council approves Resolution 020921-6. Be it resolved that in regard to the Norton Cafeteria Renovations Capital Project, the Town Council authorizes the Public Building Commission to : and I think because of this, we need to talk about it before we second anything. So I've done the resolution, but it's incomplete. So that's the version I received.
Yep.
So I
think
would
it's really
invite,
just more for discussion and
Exactly.
possible direction.
right. So
With that, I think Mr. Durkee is here, would like to add some information to this, and then I'll open it up for questions and comment.
Is there a second on that, Mr. Chairman?
There's no
There really
resolution.
was, there's no resolution.
Oh, there is no resolution. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Durkee, you need to unmute.
Do it.
Yep.
Our issue here is that compare this project to the Doolittle School project cafeteria, which was involved in both. We've got quite a bit of an upgrade of cost of construction from that point to this point, as well as this is a more complicated cafeteria kitchen renovation work. So we're over budget. We got a $532,000 budget we have. I mean, our construction cost estimate. We have $370,000 after fees, which is the architectural fees. So we've got a shortfall of about $160,000. So in doing that, we have issues. We'd have to either go to referendum. You have to go to referendum. We postpone the project until that happens, get the additional money. Or we try to look at maybe doing part of the work now, which we recommend maybe the freezer refrigerator addition, which is going on the outside of the building. So there's our problem here, and we basically want direction from the council on how to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Durkey. Mr. Slocum, back to you.
I had a question, Mr. Durkey, and it goes to actually that suggestion that some money be expended on the freezer. Now, that was a separate appropriation, is that correct? That's not a part of the kitchen renovation.
I do not believe we had a separate appropriation for that.
See, because
I
when
can-
I looked at the paperwork on this, I couldn't distinguish where in the kitchen servery renovation the outdoor stuff was listed. That's why I was confused. But
We
maybe you
basically,
could point.
yeah, I think that where this came from is right now is a very crowded kitchen. There's a lot of heat gain in that kitchen because of the present freestanding, 3 and 2 unit refrigerator freezer units in there. There's no ventilation in there. It's pretty bad. We didn't have unlike Doolittle, we had a spot. We actually we found a storage room to put this into, and we built an interior freezer unit into that, or refrigerator unit into that. This space is quite a complicated mess, I have to say. It's just a bunch of little tiny rooms that don't go anywhere, and the access flow is really terrible. So we opted to, as the committee, to look into designing something that attaches to the building. It's basically a freestanding freezer that's and we have a doorway that goes back in. So this solved a lot of problems. It's part of the construction of that space, same we did on the other one. Okay.
So in effect, just as a follow-on, this is possibly the cost increase we're looking at bearing, just going to that effort to get that done. and work within the
George,
space.
do we have a number for the freezer? Forgot.
We do. It's, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's 157,000 from memory.
158,
just-
925.
Right, but just for clarification, gentlemen, is that number a part of the 532,516?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's correct. It's all bundled in that 532, but if you break out just the freezer and refrigerator part, that's when you get the 159 and change.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Walsh?
Well, Norton is one of the schools that the SMC is talking about. So, and I understand this is not just going out to bid anyway. So this could change after the SMC and after November. But I do understand, because I mean, Norton has other issues as well besides just at the cafeteria, from what I understand. So I do see, but I had the same question that Tim had, because I was looking at the 158 and then the 532, and I was saying, is that all together? But you answered that question. So the 158 was pulled out of that 532 in case you just want to do that. Now that has already been budgeted, correct, in the capital budget, or no?
That there was an original appropriation for 400,000 for this work, which would have included that as part of
You
it.
could still do that without doing anything through us, but if to do the whole project, you need that additional amount from us.
160,000, right?
And that's a referendum question. That would have to go to referendum too.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Veliver?
Yes, Steve or George, if we did this, and from what you had talked about just a few minutes ago about the freezers in the cafeteria, and this would take those out. Would this, by doing this, this would also free up some additional square footage in the physical cafeteria by taking the existing freezers out and moving this to a sort of an external freezer? Would that you're saying?
Yes.
So okay, so you get some increase in floor space because of by doing this as well. So there is,
Right.
in addition to just moving the freezer out, you do get some a little benefit to free up some room in there.
We basically, they have I can tell you right now, it's a non-compliant kitchen. It doesn't have, to me, as a previous engineer, They don't have the proper culinary sinks, the hand wash sinks. They have a few there, but they're not like they should. They have a terrible storage situation. That's one of their issues. You know, they're bringing in, they just piles everywhere. It's a mess trying to get in and out of that space. Very low ceiling space. It's just a real tight little box. What the project was involved was try to get, the majority of the project is basically get 2 lines of flow to the kitchen, so they can get all these kids in there and out in 20 minutes. Basically, it's a nightmare trying to get their number of students going through one line. They make a cold line and a hot line now, and it was an extremely good project over at Doolittle that really worked. I mean, it really solved the issue of getting these kids fed where they had time to have. But I mean, that was the major project here. But in doing so, you have to look at the whole kitchen and fix it. So, and I've been told that a lot of this stuff is COVID related, that the prices are up because of this. So that's probably why we got a higher number.
Other questions or comments?
I did have one question, Mr. Chairman. And it goes to just the comparative analysis, because I think most of us had the opportunity to see the servery upgrades that took place at Doolittle, and we were really quite impressed. It was a project that turned out well. If in fact this was authorized and passed at referendum, are we really comparing the same product? Is the outcome the same?
Very similar, yes.
Ceiling got higher and everything you needed to
You're going
take
to get
care of
that
it
2
stuff?
lines, right? You're going to get the 2 lines of servery, basically extending into the cafeteria that we have. Very similar to that. We actually found a better solution on the firewalls, which we have to worry about that. The servery will actually be in the cafeteria section, and we have closed offs behind it, which solved a lot of problems with those, the cost of a fire door, big fire door, which we had.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jinks?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, so if we just did the cooler and the freezer at this point, so how much of the sort of overall project does that really get you down the road? I mean, what would you say?
It doesn't hurt to have it. I mean, again, we don't know what you're doing with the building in the future. Could this be used? Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. You have it there and you keep your kitchen nearby, you still have that facility. It's not going to go to waste. That's what I'm kind of thinking of this. Do we do the other project without the freezer? I think we're still over budget. And we try to figure out how to put all these existing freestanding units back in. I think we don't have contingency. We're still short, So.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? I have a couple, Mr. Durkee. Now, so this estimate that is the 532, that's based on our architectural's estimate. This has not been bid, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to walk through the numbers a little bit, and please bear with me. The estimate is $532,000, and that includes 4 add alternates. If you pull the add alternates out, you're down to $519,000. And in that $519,000, you have a contingency of 10% of the total, which is 10% of the hard cost, which is $47,192. So if you pull the contingency and the add alternates out, you're down to $471,923. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't have a contingency in every project. I think it would be inappropriate not to have it. But what I'm trying to get at is putting school modernization aside, if we believe that Norton plays into our plan long term, I would rather not see the kids get the benefit of this for another year or what have you. So my suggestion, and again, I'm only one of 9, would, again, if SMC doesn't have an issue with the long-term viability of Norton, I would ask that maybe we try to skinny this up a little bit to get it below the referendum amount and potentially get it out to bid and see if we can get some real hard numbers on it in hopes that maybe we could advance this project sooner than later. That would be my goal. I'm completely comfortable with allocating some additional dollars to this project because I think the kids in the school needs it. And I'd rather not see it delayed for another year and a half because of the referendum issue. And since we only have an estimate based on an architect's perspective, maybe by trying to have you guys fine tune the numbers a little bit, maybe some value engineering initially, and then get it out to bid, we may be able to get that number down a bit based on what I just walked through. I mean, we can do without the 4 add alternates, I would think. And, you know, we need a contingency, but, you know, how much of a contingency, I'm not sure. So that's my suggestion. I know nobody else has really given you any kind of suggestions as to where to go. You're looking for some direction. That's Rob Orris's direction, and I won't speak for anybody else. Anybody want to, you know, does anybody have any other thoughts? I know we've asked questions, but I think what Mr. Durkee is asking for on behalf of public building is some level of direction.
Well, I think Rob, has to speak to maybe those add alternates because I didn't look at that as carefully. So I guess that would be my question. I don't know if you can even answer that tonight, but that's certainly a good comment from the chairman. But does that really kill the project? I know we call them add alternates, but sometimes they're critical. I just I don't know what they are.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the specifics of some of them are, but.
Well, I
know
have
that-
them, Mr. Durkee. Yeah,
Okay.
if you don't mind, I don't mean to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but
Go ahead,
I'll
do it.
jump in. The add alternate one is base with new base and second Blodgett oven, whatever that is.
Oh, yeah, these are equipment options. That's
Okay,
what
and
most of these
then
are. Yeah.
there's a new washer dryer combo by Kenmore. We could probably forego that.
Yep.
A new countertop steamer AccuTemp, and then a new cabinet mobile warming and holding model. So, you know, those total about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, that's probably $13,000, $14,000 there. I imagine they're in as add alternates because they're not requirements. They're probably nice to haves, but if you give the school system the option of doing the project sooner and not getting those add alternates right away, I mean, we'll ask Mr. Messiana what he thinks, but I would think they'd rather see the project go forward sooner and not get the add alternates than putting the whole project off. That would be my assumption.
Yeah, I think, you know, equipment stuff is definitely, I don't want to say it's like wish listing, but they're items that they didn't have now. They'd like to have that for, you know, obviously making their food. But yeah, we can look at all these options and the alternates and take a go for it and put out the bid. The problem right now, George, jump in here, help me on this. Are we too late for the bid right now? That's the question.
We're getting pretty tight because
We're getting real tight.
some of these items are a pretty long lead time. We're hearing through the designer and others. Again, with COVID, which nobody wants to hear, it's pushed out a lot of the factories and producers. So there's 12-week lead times for some things in the cooking arena. And if we kind of line it up, if this goes out to bid in mid-April, mid-March, if the council authorizes that, we'll get the bids back in mid-April. The project would probably get awarded in late April or early May. And then from there, you got to start your ordering and all those processes. So 12 weeks goes by pretty quickly at that point, and you're into August. So we can do, the PBC has been very willing to take on projects, and I'm sure they'll do whatever they can, but it's just, this is a tough year.
Well, the question becomes, are we just not able to physically get the bid done and get the project done? If the facts are, no matter what we do now, we can't do it this summer, then that's a whole different scenario. If we have a shot of getting it done this summer for the schools and the kids, I'd like to try to do that by doing a little value engineering through public building, getting it out to bid and see what the actual numbers are. If they come back and we can't afford it, then we're right back to where we thought we were anyway. No harm, no foul. It just has to get delayed. And we could certainly put this out at referendum in November if the numbers don't change. But I'm trying to find a way to, get the school system and the kids what they need in a quicker fashion. Again, putting SMC's issues aside.
Sure.
I think we could probably do something like that. Means we need to push the architect. Yeah, he's pretty close. Last time I talked to him, they were like 95% done. I basically had him to be shovel ready at the time. I don't know if he's got that 100% yet. But we could throw it out there and bid it. I mean, and then with the heavy alternates, and maybe the
again,
freezer
maybe a
doesn't.
little value engineering. I mean, I would spend a little bit of time going through these line items and see if you can value it a little bit and say, okay, maybe we can, some of these items can be modified a little bit from his design to lower the numbers before we go out to bid in hopes that we get a lower number. That's just kind of my thoughts. But if you don't think it's possible, Mr. Durkee, I hear you. And I see Mr. Jinks raising his hand. So go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. So if we go out to bid and it comes back and we don't, the numbers still aren't favorable for us, would we still have time to perhaps just do the freezer and cooler option over the summer? Or would that be too late?
I think if George jump in, but I think if we have it proposed right there's separate line items that we can probably pick and choose any way we want to do it. If you want to just take the freezer, the refrigerator, it's a line item in there, and we take that bid. We have an all encompassing, but we have individual bids of these items.
Right. I mean, I was just in the event that the numbers come back and it's still kind of too big of a number, we don't want to kind of swallow that at this point. That may be an option to at least start to get some of the work done.
I think that's an excellent point, Jim, that when if we do agree to get this out to bid, that you give us the opportunity to be able to do the freezer project independent of everything else. I think
I
it's
like
a good
that.
point. Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Mr. Veliver, I see you raising your hand.
But, and I agree. I think that's a great idea. But I guess my question goes back to the question Tim had asked George and Steve, which was, as I'm looking at the numbers for the 532 number, are you sure, George, that this 150? It seems to me that this 158 is an alternative project, because I don't see anywhere in the 532 budget estimate that there's a big enough line item to include a freezer. And so I guess my question is, are you sure this isn't an alternative project? And it seems to me that the kitchen is one project and the freezer is another. I don't see a line item in the kitchen project that's big enough to include this freezer item. So I guess my question is it seems to me that this really is two different projects. And it's like, if we can't do one, we're going to do the other, not that the other is a subset of the main project. So I guess that's my question, because I don't see a $158,000 plus line item in the kitchen budget.
Right, that's always been part of the original project, is a cooler and freezer. So I think what brings it up to 158 is that there's other work inside. There's demolition work and some other stuff that have to happen. So there's other line items that are affected in there, and certainly electrical and foundations and everything else that have to go outside. So I'll double verify, but that's always been in the project, and that's the way it's always been presented to the designer.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, could they live with no freezer, and we figure out where we stick these things for now? Because the equipment's not going to go in. Maybe that's the answer.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm not suggesting that they shouldn't get a freezer. I'm just trying to clarify the statement that the freezer is included in the 532, and as opposed to it is a 532 project for a kitchen plus a $158,000 cooler.
David, Ken,
Yep.
I've been puzzling about that, but if you put the two charts side by side and you look at the items, number one is demolition and site prep. In the total budget of 532, demolition and site prep is 31,000. If you look at this, just the freezer part of it, it goes down to 14,000. So that's probably to do correct me if I'm wrong. And the next one is the site and earthwork is the same, because you're going to change that. But if you go down some of those categories, they change in numbers. So it looks like that all of those accessory things that have added up to the 158 are part of the numbers that are in that first page. And they've been taken out to just highlight freezer because it's servery and kitchen equipment on the front page is 111,000. And on the freezer one, it's 55,000. So one would assume by seeing that the freezer service things would be 55, but if you're going to redo the whole kitchen, that would include the freezer plus whatever else they're coming up with to equal 111. Does that make sense?
Nope,
You're a
it
good
totally makes
shopper.
sense. Yeah, that's good. I was just curious. I just wanted to make sure in my mind that it was clarifying that we weren't saying we're gonna have two different projects and we're gonna, if we can't do this project, let's do this project.
Because I was concerned about that as well, but I sat and looked at it that way. And I think that may be the right explanation, but maybe not. George, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
That's what George is saying, and I don't doubt him. I'm just
Okay.
curious.
Okay.
I think it's all valid questions, but I think we need to rely on George and Mr. Durkee and the committee that they've got it right. So,
Perfect, absolutely.
Mr. Talbot, I saw you had your hand raised.
I did, but Mrs. Nichols did a much better job of saying what I wanted to say than I could have. So all set.
Okay, so I've made a recommendation and I know Jim kind of jumped on that and added a little twist to it, which I think is great. So we've kind of got some direction from Jim and I. Is everybody in agreement with kind of what we're suggesting, Mr. Slocum?
I am in agreement, and I just had one little question as it relates to equipment. Equipment does not have to be a capital project add-on, correct? I mean, if some of the equipment goes away, that can be purchased as equipment for a kitchen at a later date, if I'm not mistaken, and it doesn't add to the referendum value of that project. Is that correct, or is it always assigned to the total cost of a project? I mean, some of those add alternates, for
Good question.
example, if they're scuttled, and you know, what's the difference if they're added later on a different appropriation?
I don't think there's a problem at all with that, Mr. Slocum, but Sean, maybe you can weigh in on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think without specifics, I mean, the example of what was it, the Kenmore washer and dryer, I think that certainly falls in the category of something that you could add later, and I don't think bond counsel would tell you can't. Certainly though, if you were adding a $80,000 piece of critical equipment, maybe to a room or a freezer like this, that would ultimately be something bond counsel would probably need to weigh in on, certainly to the extent that bond funds are being used. But I can't imagine items like that can't be added at a later date, and you don't have to go back to referendum.
Thank you.
So unless I hear any arguments on this, it sounds like, Mr. Durkee, our recommendation or direction is to ask the Public Building Commission with our architect to take a look at the numbers, see if you can value engineer it a little bit, get it out to bid with the option of doing the freezer project separately to the extent we can. And we'll determine whether, number one, timing wise, we can get it done, and two, where we are costs for the full project and or the freezer project separately. Does that sound right, everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
Does that seem reasonable to you, Mr. Durkee and Mr. Nawatney?
Yeah, we can do this.
Yeah. And I, again, I'm not looking to push more work on everybody, but I think our goal here is to try to assist the kids in the schools. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. If we can't get it done and it just doesn't work numerically or for another reason, we haven't lost anything. The fallback has always been, we send it to referendum and it gets done the following summer. So by doing what we're doing, we haven't cost anything other than we're trying. And so I think that's the best way to move forward.
If I could just ask Mr.
Go
Chairman
ahead,
real
Sean.
quick, just to be clear, George, would you expect to be coming back to the council for approval to go to bid per the PBC ordinance, or do you need something tonight, just in the interest that Chairman Orris is saying, to move this along? Is there any motion that you need tonight on this?
No, I think that direction is clear. The PBC's got to meet later this month and they've got to approve the design at that point, and then they'll be back to you for the advertising for bid and approval of design, which would probably be your March meeting, I'm guessing.
And I guess, Mr. Durkee, if the PBC just doesn't think this is possible, then certainly let us know that. But this is our hope at this point. And if you guys feel differently, once you talk more about it, now that you have some direction, just get back to us and let us know.
I'm in favor of trying and go for it. It really is.
Okay, sounds good. We appreciate that.
Great.
Okay, anything further on this?
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time. If there's no other discussion, we're going to move on to 9F, discussion and appointment of town attorney, Mr. Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved, the town council approves resolution 020921-7. Be it resolved, the town council appoints attorney Jeffrey D'Onofrio of Chula and D'Onofrio LLP as the town attorney for the town of Cheshire for the term of April 1, 2021 through January 31, 2023. And be it further resolved, be it resolved, the town attorney shall handle legal matters for the town council and for the town of Cheshire, and is responsible for the coordination and execution of all work performed by Chula and D'Onofrio LLP, as well as all work performed by special counsel hired by the town attorney. And be it further resolved that the town council authorizes the execution of an agreement for said legal services pursuant to the town charter section 5-1 and the terms as presented and discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Is there a second?
Okay.
Second.
I'm sorry, Ms. Pravano, go ahead. Thank you for the second. With that, I'll go back to you, Mr. Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I support the motion to appoint Attorney Jeff D'Onofrio to Chula and D'Onofrio as town attorney. But first, I must state, and in fact, our town has been ably served by Al Smith and his colleagues in Kalina for the past 15 years, and I sincerely thank them for their service. As your elected fiduciaries for the town of Cheshire, I, along with my council colleagues, authorized an RFP town attorney last February. We do this for many services rendered by incumbents, including auditing firms, insurers, and pension and technology, just to name but a few. We did have 8 respond. The planning committee conducted a review and then scheduled full council interviews with the finalists. Through the process, we identified the strongest representative for our community, and we look forward to a positive and productive relationship with respect to the town's legal services requirements. I thought too, even though council's been apprised of the cost details, I'd sort of put them in a little outline form. It's a retainer of $92.50 a month based on 50 hours reviewed quarterly and credited or debited for additional hours as needed. The services don't include labor, employment counsel, or bond counsel services, and services excluded by the retainer, including litigation, mediation, arbitrations, and capital projects, contract review are billed additionally at $195 an hour for partners, $165 for associates, and no charge for paralegals. That's sort of a summary of the contract. So that ends my conversation on that matter.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Are there questions or comments from members of the council? Yes, Ms. Pavano.
Yes, I was very impressed with the interviews that we had with Attorney D'Onofrio. I was especially impressed with his passion, and I really think that he and his firm will be a very good fit for the town of Cheshire, and I'm sure we all look forward to working with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be voting against the resolution tonight, but I want to be abundantly clear that my vote tonight is not a reflection on the firm of Chula and D'Onofrio. I think they're an excellent firm who has done outstanding work by all accounts in North Haven, Connecticut. For me, during the interview process, the two were very close, and based on that, I chose not to change at this time. That is a reflection of why I will be voting the way I am. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Talbot. Mr. Jenks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to sort of echo what Peter said. I had, no reflection on Mr. D'Onofrio and his firm. I'm going to vote against the resolution as well. just feeling like just still have concerns about his firm's, ability to handle the amount of work that we've been generating as a town. And feeling like there's not necessarily a need to make a change at this point. And I'm also certain that Mr. D'Onofrio will do a good job for us, but we'll be voting against the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this was a very difficult decision on especially, somebody new to the council like myself, because it has no reflection on what we feel personally towards Al or his group, who we've had interactions with. I've had interactions with throughout the past year and a half. What it comes down to is that we, as a council, have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we are doing the right thing for the people of this town, the taxpayers of this town, and that we are making sure that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that what we are paying for the services are fair price and something that we're getting a similar type of work out of. We did a lot of I myself did my own personal checking on Attorney D'Onofrio, and found only high regards for his work and what he has done. And I felt that it comes down to the fiduciary end of it, and I feel that it's the best firm for the town of Cheshire at this time. So I am going to be voting in favor of this, but I appreciate all the work that Al and his team have put together for the many years, even when I wasn't on the council. So we thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? I don't see any, so I'll make a brief statement. First and foremost, I want to sincerely thank Al Smith and all of his colleagues at Murtha Cullina for their many years of service to the town of Cheshire. They served us well. This was a very, very difficult decision. I agree. We have a responsibility to do an RFP every so often as a fiduciary for our taxpayers and our residents. We didn't do it for a number of years for a lot of good reasons, in my opinion. But nonetheless, I think it's important that we do it occasionally. And it was a thorough process. I want to commend our planning committee of the town council. They kind of led the charge. It was a very thorough process. We had a plethora of excellent firms that submitted, and it came down to two. And it was a very, very difficult decision. I will be supporting the motion tonight, but I can tell you it didn't come without a lot of deep thought, analysis, and consideration. I do agree that I think at the end of the day, this is the best decision moving forward for the community based on the information that I have in front of me, so I will support it. But I want everyone to understand it was a very thorough process, a very difficult decision. I know this council takes it very heavily. This was not a lighthearted decision or a quick decision on our part. You can see we don't change attorneys very often, but nonetheless, we did put this RFP out, and it is where it is at this moment, and I will support the resolution. So are there any other members of the council that have any questions or comments before I call for a vote? Seeing none. With that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 7 in favor, 2 opposed. Mr. Jinks and Mr. Talbot opposed, for the record, Ms. Milton. With that, we are going to move on to item G, which is discussion and possible action regarding the tax appeal stipulated agreement with Rite Aid. We did discuss this a bit in executive session. I do not believe this is ready for prime time. We just weren't able to get to all of the facts that we needed to address this issue. So I guess as a point of order, Ms. Talbot, given the fact that it's on our agenda, do we need to have a motion to defer, or is we just, I don't think it's ready for prime time?
You can just can move on and we'll make sure it's on another
Okay,
agenda.
so I think we're all in agreement that we're going to take this up with some further analysis and discussion, and we'll get to it as quickly as we can at our next meeting and address this. We just didn't have the time to give it its proper due course for tonight's meeting. So our apologies to Rite Aid on that. With that, we'll move on to Town Manager Report and Communications. Mr. Kimball?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What about resolution number 9? Arnett?
I don't have a resolution.
That was
number
in there
9.
by mistake. That just
Oh,
should have been
okay, thank
pulled.
you. I did not know that. Thank you.
You're not
Sorry.
wrong, Marilyn, because there was a resolution number 9, but it came
Yeah,
off
I
the
got it
agenda,
right
so
here.
you're not wrong. I
Thank you,
thought maybe
guys.
you caught me. I thought maybe you caught me on something that I missed.
No, you're perfect. You don't do that.
Marilyn, can you tell my wife that, please?
I'll send her a memo.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the Town
Well-
Manager Report and Communications. Mr. Kimball.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, I'll begin as I have, I think, for the better part of a year with an update on COVID-19. Again, echoing what Maura Esposito presented earlier. We are continuing to closely monitor our COVID cases locally. And the good news that we temper a little bit, but things are starting to bend in the right direction. You'll see in the graph that I've prepared here, our daily reported cases from DPH. This is straight off the DPH data webpage. And you'll see both the incredible activity, certainly compared to even March and April, in terms of number of new cases over the last 3 months or so. But we are starting to see things trend in a positive direction, as you see the yellow trend line curve here. Over the last 7 days, DPH is reporting that Cheshire has about a 4.3% positivity rate. That's 112 positives out of 2,592 tests. And again, hopefully this bending curve is a sign of both the vaccine working and maybe starting to come on the better side of this after the last couple of months. As Maura reviewed earlier, we've hosted 10 vaccination clinics, 8 first dose and 2 second dose at the community pool since January. Following guidelines, eligibility began with phase 1A medical first responders, followed by the 75 and older group, beginning with our January 21st clinic. And now, as everyone is aware, they're moving to the 65 and older category going forward. Chesprocott has given out a total of 1,808 vaccines to date, with more clinics planned over the upcoming month, including tomorrow and Thursday. As additional pharmacy and mass vaccination sites come online, we are working with Chesprocott to transition to smaller clinics at the respective senior centers of the 3 member towns in order to better target eligible residents who may have accessibility or technology access issues. This is the map of the percent of population age 75 and older who have received their first dose that I shared earlier in the presentation from Maura Esposito. The fiscal 22 operating budget and capital budget are under development. Last week, the Board of Education advanced the superintendent's proposed operating budget unmodified, which requests an increase of approximately $3.9 million or 5.22%. The governor is expected to release his state budget proposal tomorrow, and so we will be closely monitoring and evaluating the potential impact on Cheshire in terms of revenues from state aid. And again, the deadline for transmittal of the recommended budget to the town council for consideration is Wednesday, March 10th by charter. And the deadline for town council budget adoption is Friday, April 30th. As the council is aware, every 2 years, historically, we hold our bond sale typically in February. But one second, looks like Sandy's coming in. Arnett, can you let Sandy in? She's in the waiting room. I don't know if I can here we go. Never mind. All right, hopefully Sandy's with us there. I can't see everybody. This year, we've been working closely with our financial advisor, and Jim and I have been having conversations about timing this year's bond issuance to fund previously approved capital projects. Again, due to the historically low interest rate environment that we're currently in, we may have a potential opportunity to refund approximately $20 million of existing Clean Water Fund debt. As the council may be aware, this is debt was issued in the past to fund the sewer treatment plant upgrades, and the state program pegs that rate at 2%. But sort of a situation we almost never thought we'd find ourselves in. You actually based on the call dates, might have an opportunity to refund our debt based on our credit rating and the maturity of those loans. We can potentially save up to $750 or $1 million over the next 15 years based on the projections we were reviewing earlier today. So I'll be giving the council more information on that, but we're trying to time our issuance to not only fund recently approved new general obligation debt, but possibly refunding on those Clean Water Fund loans. So more to come on that in the coming weeks. Some updates from the Public Works arena. The state has released a resurfacing schedule for state roads. As everyone's aware, there were a lot of state road resurfacing projects in Cheshire last year. This year, the project they're planning to do is an extension of the work they did last year on South Main. This would pick up where they left off and do an additional 0.59 miles from approximately King Road to the Route 42 North Brooksvale intersection. So be on the lookout for that work this year. Eversource has announced they'll be doing some tree trimming in the following areas beginning in March or possibly even late February, depending on the weather. The South Main Street area, south of Mansion Road, including Mansion, Sunset, Revido, King, Bradford, Fenn, Mount Sanford, and Old Lane, and Orchard Hill should see tree trimming in the next few months. And also Allen Avenue, including the area of Allen Court. Also, please, you'll see attached in your packet a project completion report prepared by the PBC regarding the cafeteria renovations at Highland School, previously discussed in the prior years, and some upcoming council meetings and school modernization committee meetings. I don't have here the budget schedule, which will certainly take up a number of future meetings in the coming months. So that is the end of my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimmel. Any questions or comments from members of the council on his report? Mr. Walsh?
Sean, I just had one quick question. That map that you showed of the vaccines, you said that map, because originally Maura said that our number was high, our percentage was high because we had a high number of medical personnel living in Cheshire, but that map you showed just said 75 and over. So we have 14.1% of people 75 and older who have been vaccinated in Cheshire. That doesn't include any of the medical personnel, correct?
I'm sorry, I was muted there. No, actually, it's the map that they use actually shows both. So it's a little hard to see here, but if you zoom in, when you go to the map on their website, it shows both the 75 and older population, which for us is approximately 2,154 people. And there's
Okay.
been, of those, 1,231 have received. So that's that 57%. What the map also shows is for all ages.
All ages, okay.
Cheshire. So the color coding of this map happens to be for 75 and older, but we're actually pretty high on the metric compared to the other 168 towns with respect to total population. And you'll note that's total 14%, but that's of every person not vaccine eligible. So that includes children. That's our total population that they're using for that. So I just like to point that out. We're a little higher, closer to, I think, 18 or 19% if you remove those under the age of 16, I think it is.
And any word on if any of the other pharmacies will be getting it in town, or because I know some CVS.
Yeah, I know that the CVS in North Haven and Hamden, I believe, where they're going to be the closest that were on that first list. I have not heard that either of our CVSs or our other pharmacies at this point are going to be doing part of that program. But again, that information seems to change on really a weekly and sometimes daily basis. And as Maura mentioned before, we've been in contact weekly with the folks at Hartford Healthcare, and with respect to their plans, we were happy to hear that the Oakdale was something they were targeting, and that's going to be actually one of their largest. It'll initially be geared for 500 vaccines a day, but they're building it out to do 1,000, and they think they may go to 1,000 pretty quickly. And if they can do 1,000 vaccines a day there, again, their target is March 1st for that. So that could be here pretty soon. That would be a good resource just at the end of really Cook Hill Road for residents in Cheshire.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to miscellaneous and appointments. Excuse me, I'm sorry, reports of committees of the council. Chairman's report, Ms. Nichols? No report? Mr. Slocum?
No.
No report.
Mr. Bowery?
Just remind all of you to keep your calendars open for Tuesdays and Thursdays for the most part, from middle of March to early April. And Mr. Talbot, I promise, we're starting at 6:30. We really are going to target 8:30 to 9 o'clock, couple hours. And
Okay.
Good.
We're going to hold you to that, Mr. Bowery.
All right, that's fine.
Mr. Veliver?
No report.
Mr. Walsh?
No report.
I think that's it for chairman's reports. Miscellaneous and appointments, liaison reports. I'll start on my left. Ms. Nichols?
No report.
Mr. Talbot?
No report.
Mr. Slocum?
I've strictly been liaising with the council. No report.
Mr. Walsh?
Cheshire Housing Authority met last week. Just a couple of things. They were happy to say that their mortgage on Beachport will be paid off as of October, which will save them $89,000 a year. So that's the big thing. They're also going to be starting replacement of a sewer line going into building number 50, which has been an issue for many years. And they're also working on a new website. So they have a lot of things going on right now. But yeah, they're really excited about paying off this mortgage by the end of this year. So
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Veliver?
No report.
Mr. Jinks?
No report.
Ms. Pavano?
No report.
Great, thank you for that. Appointments to boards and commissions. Do we have any? I know we have some corrections, Ms. Nichols.
We do. We have one appointment and just a blanket, I need a blanket approval for some changes. And Arnett, there's no resolution here, so I don't know how specific we need to be, but we're presenting some changes. We presented a lot of appointments last month, and there were changes on 4 or 5 of them, which amounted to simple typos in many cases, changes in address. One number had been left off of a street address. And the terms were changed from ending on beginning on January 31st, 2021 to starting on February 1st, 2021. So we had them starting on January 31st. We need to change them to beginning on February 1st. So you should have received a list, but there are very few changes that there's nothing critical. It's just those kinds of things. So we will be submitting those corrections. Arnett, do we need to have a formal vote about that?
It probably wouldn't hurt to have a motion and a vote just to accept all of the corrections.
Yeah, well, I think we've made the motion technically. As long as we have enough detail, we can get a second and then we can just vote on it. Do you also have a new appointment,
I
Ms.
do. In
Nichols?
addition to that, I have a new appointment.
So why don't we include it all on your side and then we'll go to Mr. Talbot and then we'll vote on whatever we have.
Those all at once. Okay, and the new appointment is Henry Chase. It's a renomination of Henry Chase as a member of the Cable TV Franchise Committee. It's terms from the present to June 30th, 2022. He's a Republican.
Mr. Chair, I will second the corrections and the nomination and offer the following nominations for the council's consideration. To move through these rather quickly, the political affiliation on all of the ones that I will bring forward is Democrat. And with the exception of this first one that I'm doing, all of them are renominations. So the first is the appointment of Jamie Ferguson to Economic Development Commission. This is a new appointment replacing Steve Sidorik. I want to thank Steve for his longtime service on economic development. And Jamie's term will be from February 9th, 21 until 1/31/25. Thomas Scannell to Water Pollution Control Authority. Term is 2/9/21 to 1/31/24. Monique D'Onofrio to Performing and Fine Arts Committee. Term 2/9/21 to 1/31/24. Susan Dillman to Beautification Committee. term 2/9/21 to 1/31/23. Pat Archibald to Beautification Committee, term 2/9/21 to 1/31/23. Maria Colacray to Beautification Committee, term 2/9/21 to 1/31/23. Matt Abdafar to Environment Commission, 2/9/21 to 1/31/25. Thomas Hickey to the Environment Commission, 2/9/21 to 1/31/25. Carrie Dunn to Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, term 2/9/21 to 1/31/25. Dr. Charles Dimick to Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, term 2/9/21 to 1/31/25. Catherine Giampetro to Performing and Fine Arts Committee, 2/9/21 to 1/31/24. Yui Turek to Performing and Fine Arts Committee, 2/9/21 to 1/31/24. Abood Abdul Ghani to Water Pollution Control Authority, term 2/9/21 to 1/31/24. John Nan to Youth and Human Services Committee, 2/9/21 to 1/31/23. And Fiona Pearson to Parks and Recreation Commission, term 2/9/21 to 1/31/25.
And I will second all of those. Very nicely done, Mr. Talbot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Are there any questions on the nominations and the corrections from members of the council? Seeing none, with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to item 13, Town Attorney Report and Communications. Attorney Smith?
No report.
Thank you, sir. We will move on to council communications, letters to the council. Any members of the council have any letters they would like to discuss? I do have a few. Seeing none. As you know, we all received, I believe, 6 letters of support for Pat Mottola to be named the Cheshire's Poet Laureate. And the individuals that sent them, one letter was co-signed by Fiona Pearson and Karen Schnitzer. There was another by Brian Johnson, another by Pat Mottola, another by Allison Bass Riccio, another by Colleen Roca, and another by Kate Roca Corto. So I think we all got those letters. I just want to thank them for sending those letters in. We do appreciate your thoughts on that. I also received a letter from Jim Flood at Bovano Industries, talking about a couple of things, and I just want to mention it. I'll just summarize it. His first comment was taking some umbrage with a statement that I made in support of the ball and socket project, where I had mentioned that it was one of our shots at creating a downtown, and he felt like that comment somehow was disparaging other areas of the community. And I can assure Mr. Flood that that was not the case. Obviously, my support and our support for ball and socket is because we do think that's a general area of our community that is well served for economic development, and we support any efforts, particularly ball and socket, in that location. And I do believe that that is a potential area for us to create a downtown-like area for our community because we don't have a town green, et cetera. It by no means reflects on my support or all of our support for the balance of our commercial districts. I think we as a council and our staff works very hard to assist all of our businesses who are here relative to any matters, whether it be expansion and other issues. So I want to assure him, I don't quite agree with his thoughts as to my statement, but I want to be very clear about what I meant when I said that. He also talked a bit about having concerns about increased taxes. As a business owner in our community, he's concerned about increased taxes. His taxes have gone up, and I think that's a result of assessment increases. I know the council has worked very hard, particularly in our last budget where we had a 0 mill rate increase to keep this community affordable. So I think we're working very hard. I hear you, Mr. Flood, on that issue. And he went on to thank certainly me and all of our council on our efforts that we personally take to help manage our community. So I thank him for that recognition and comment. So I think it was a letter that warranted being addressed to Mr. Flood. Hopefully, I've done my best to do so, and I appreciate his letter to me and to the full council. So that's all I have. Do we have any other letters again? Correspondence to the community, the council? Seeing none. That's it for our evening agenda. I will ask now at this point. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jinks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. We are adjourned. I thank all of you in the community who are watching. I look forward to getting all of us back in person, hopefully sometime soon. But thank you for watching. Good night to everybody. Thank you all for being here.